so happy we alive.
$1 trillion at the cost of tens of thousands of lives and filling the prisons to the rafters, we've managed to increase that figure of addiction by a factor of 5. We now have 15 people per 1,000 addicted to morphine and so forth. So you would have to say by any measure the war on drugs has been an absolutely colossal disaster. And we're now spending $17 billion a year in federal money, a matching amount in the states, for a total of $30 billion annually on the war on drugs just here in the United States. We've arrested 1 million people every year for marijuana offenses. And all of the scientific evidence, and I must say I've read the vast majority of this stuff. I was trained as an engineer. So engineers are interested in facts. We're not, I mean, the reason we were able to go to the moon is because there is no religious orthodoxy about gravity, right? You just simply have to go by the rules and design it according to reality. You can't just create your own reality. In this arena, in the area of drug use and abuse, we are living in a fantasy world. And rather than keeping drugs out of the hands of children, which was certainly our intention when we got involved in this. I mean, I would say, wouldn't you, that that's the number one goal
concern
everybody can agree on is how do we keep these drugs out of the hands of our kids?
Exactly, that's a big selling point.
Right, and in the drugs we include, of course, alcohol and tobacco and marijuana and morphine and everything else. A worthwhile goal. What have we done instead? We've created a situation where it's easier for them to get heroin and marijuana than it is to get beer, which is insane.
Hipster initiative picked up the bad leg and it totally made industrial hemp legal in that state, took out every single impediment to growing industrial hemp in that state. But the DEA has kept them from doing anything about it. The DEA kept us from growing hemp when we got it planted in 1993 in the Imperial Valley of California. It got cut down before we could finish the experiment. John Stahl was a paper maker in California. In 1993, he decided he wanted to try to grow it. So we went to the DEA, and the regulations were 10-foot fences and 2-foot angle bars and guard towers and motion detectors and security systems, a safe to keep the seed in, and all these things. And I put out the money. I financed John Stahl putting up a whole stockade facility to grow industrial hemp. And they stalled him for 5 years on bureaucracy trying to get a license. Spectrum Naturals, the oil company I've been working with since 1991, producing what I hope is America's best hemp oil. They have applied for the DEA license to bring live seeds to their facility in California and crush them into oil. And we did 2 years of waiting for the DEA until they finally called us up and told us to withdraw the application because it was about to be turned down. But finally, somebody broke through this. And a lot of credit goes to one particular person. Well, Peter Thielen, he's the person who made this hemp shirt here, Hawaiian hemp wear. His mom turned out to be an Hawaii state representative, a very capable lawyer, Cynthia Thielen. And she single-handedly, over the course of a couple of years, browbeat every senator and legislature in Hawaii into passing her industrial hemp bill that allowed the university
of reefer madness, and doctors became not only victims of this disinformation campaign, but unfortunately, by virtue of the fact that they are physicians, they became very effective agents of this campaign. Now, the modern renaissance of cannabis as a medicine began in the early 1970s when a couple of young patients, actually there were 2 critical patients here, a young man in Houston, Texas, who had leukemia, and one in Boston, both of whom demonstrated to their doctors how effective this medicine was in halting and preventing the extraordinary nausea and vomiting of cancer chemotherapy. This spread over there was actually a study published that came out of this in the New England Journal of Medicine in 1974 or 5, but mostly it spread on the cancer treatment grapevine. And this then took off. People understood, and this was before ondansetron. Well, the only thing we had to treat this was fluorochromazine. Now, in the mid-70s, some physicians at UCLA serendipitously discovered that cannabis lowers the intraocular pressure, and with that, patients like Robert Randall started to use cannabis to treat glaucoma, and again, the word on this spread, and very many people started to use it for that. But I think the most important development in this renaissance was the discovery by AIDS patients in the 80s that the weight reduction syndrome, that cannabis is powerfully effective against that. To impose the FDA protocol on marijuana to give it this modern seal of approval would be like doing the same thing for aspirin. Aspirin was synthesized in 1898, acetyl salicylic acid. It rapidly, because people could see, and we've had loads of experience, mind you, this was more than 60 years before the large double-blind control studies, the gold standard of the acceptance of medicines nowadays. We have an enormous amount of experience with aspirin, as we do with cannabis, and it is safe. Now, mind you, when I say safe, in parentheses, we lose about 1,000 to 2,000 patients every year to aspirin in this country. And yet that's considered a safe medicine. If you look at the NSAIDs, for example, about 100,000 people are NSAIDs, meaning non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, of which ibuprofen is an example. About 100,000 people, more than 100,000 people are hospitalized for complications with NSAIDs, and 10% of them lose their lives. Now, they are considered safe medicines. But the fact of the matter is, to go back to aspirin, if you tried to get it through the FDA approval process today, it couldn't be done because the patent had long since expired, and nobody is going to put up the tremendous amount of money it would take to do this. Or more specifically, developing, separating out the cannabinoids, more specifically, developing cannabinoid analogs. Now, you see, one of the things we know about whole marijuana plant as a medicine, nobody has ever died from marijuana. Imagine, is there another drug in the whole pharmacopoeia about which you can say there has never been a death? You can't do that. But that's because it has a therapeutic ratio. By therapeutic ratio, the ratio of the amount of drug it takes to kill a population of, and the LD50, a population, 50% of a population, only the amount of drug to get the desired effect. Now, in cannabis, that ratio we can't determine from human creatures, we can only extrapolate from animals. It's somewhere between 20,000 and 40,000. There's no other drug that has that. But then, we're getting into analogs now. We're developing these things. Hopefully these guys are going to interest the drug companies. I think they're going to have a tough sell unless there's such a level of enforcement and we start arresting even more than 600,000 people for using it so that people are afraid to use it. But they're developing these things, and as I say, one already has been elaborated that has 500 times the psychoactive effect. We have no experience. You can't get that much cannabis into you no matter how hard you try. We have no experience with that degree of psychoactivity. And the other thing is, you know, as I say, take whole cannabis, and whether you smoke it or eat it or put it through your ears or whatever, you're not going to get enough in it, in yourself, to lead to death.